Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Episode 344. Very immoral. Donnie knew it very well. The reason why a big shot like Taylor respected him so much was because of Zach. Therefore, although he was quite happy in his heart, he didn't dare to go against the rules. After all, he was someone close to Zach, so he should restrain his words and actions. Thus he said, "Thank you, Taylor, but I..." Before Donnie could finish, Zach replied, "Take it if I tell you to. You really think I'm asking you to protect me? You can't even see the road when I tell you to drive. I brought you here this time to relax." At first, Donnie felt quite awkward when Zach said it. However, after hearing his job, Donnie suddenly became extremely excited. "Thank you, boss." After handing Donnie over to Taylor, Zach returned to the guest room. After washing up, Zach laid down and slept. Since he didn't ask for it, Taylor didn't dare to make random arrangements. Therefore, Taylor, who was with Donnie, seemed to be asking for trouble, so he could only ask Donnie for help. "Donnie, in your opinion, is there a need to make proper entertainment arrangements for Mr. Marquez?" Donnie waved his hand. "No need. The boss will naturally mention it if he needs it. If he doesn't mention it, it means that he doesn't need it. Taylor doesn't need to think too much. The boss is not a difficult person to get along with. As long as you do your job well, it will be enough. Also, Taylor, don't address me respectfully anymore. I am just a little bodyguard. What virtues and abilities do I have? If I wasn't by the boss's side, you wouldn't have looked me in the eye. That's why I'm already very grateful that Taylor can arrange some entertainment for me." Taylor smiled. Donnie's words made him feel much more relaxed. He believed that, just like what Donnie said, Zach should not be a difficult person to get along with. As for Donnie, he did have a good impression of him. It was still taboo to speak of these things in their proper English. Innuendo was necessary to keep the conversation respectful. However, it was different when Donnie said it out loud. It was a straightforward feeling. Even the bodyguards were so straightforward. He believed that. The boss was definitely not a person who was too difficult to serve. This made Taylor more and more relieved. As long as Zach was not difficult to get along with, his life would be much better. He just had to do his best to serve Zach and do what he was supposed to do, and he would be happy to do so. After arranging Donnie to have some fun, Taylor called Mark Angler. "Hello, Taylor. What time are you calling me? You better give me a suitable reason, otherwise Tomorrow morning, at the Jasmine International Hotel, Mr. Marquez will meet you. If you don't appear at that time, you will have to bear the consequences." After the notification, Taylor hung up the phone. In the past, he had always felt unhappy about Mark Angler, but Mark Angler was still a local snake, a member of the Angler family in Canada. "But now, I'm sorry Taylor am Mr. Marquez's man. Mr. Marquez is with me." On the other side, Mark Angler glared at his phone. Drive me to the airport. I want to go back. Mark Angler was extremely depressed. It was not easy for him to escape, but Zach had come. The next morning, after Zach woke up, he washed up and ate breakfast. Then he stood in his guest room. He lit a cigarette and stood in front of the window. He looked at the time displayed on his wrist. It seemed like Mark Angler was only a minute away from death. This was really sad news. Just as Zach was staring at his watch and counting down on death, there was a knock on the door. There was even the sound of someone panting. "Mr. Marquez, it's me, Angler, I'm an interesting man." It seemed that no matter what, as long as he was forced, he could arrive on time. Episode 345. A Pawn. After allowing him in, Mark Angler panted heavily as he entered. His forehead was covered in sweat. "Mr. Marquez, I'm coming. Mark Angler held onto the door frame. He was so tired that he looked like a dog that had been exposed to the sun for a long time in the midsummer. He also stuck out his tongue. Zach laughed and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? Slow down for a bit, don't tire yourself." Mark Angler cursed his mother in his heart for not pushing him to go into sports so he wasn't so out of shape. However, no matter how much he cursed in his heart, his face was still full of gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Marquez, for your understanding." Zach pointed to the sofa in the guest room and indicated for him to sit down and rest for a while. Mark Angler thanked him again, but he did not dare to really sit on the sofa. After all, Zach was still standing. Zach just stood there, so he didn't dare to sit down. He could only lean on the wall and enter the house. He did not dare to make any movements, even when his legs were swinging. He stared at Zach. Zach was not in a hurry. After he finished smoking his cigarette between his fingers, he said, "I have a mission for you." When Mark Angler heard that it was a mission, he was very unhappy. He thought, "I'm not your subordinate. Why should he give me a mission?" However, he didn't make it apparent that he was thinking such a thing. No matter how unhappy he was in his heart, he could only hide it in his heart, not even daring to let out a fart. He said solemnly, "Mr. Marquez, don't worry. I promise to complete the mission." Zach said, "Your promise. Will it work?" "It will work. It will definitely work. It must work." Mark Angler did not hesitate. Zach remembered Mark Angler's promise and said to him, "All right, go and open all your car shops for me." "Huh?" Mark Angler was stunned. He never thought that Zach would come for this matter. If he knew this was the case, he wouldn't have made such a promise. It was very awkward and embarrassing. Mark Angler had no idea how to solve this problem. "Mr. Marquez, this matter, it is not easy to handle." "What? Your promise just now was all for nothing? It's a pile of shit, and you took back your word." What Zach said was very disgusting, but he deliberately tried to disgust Mark Angler. Mark Angler's gut was twisting from the words, but he still had to show a bright and sincere smile on his face. "Mr. Marquez, it's not that I don't want to help, but because I really don't know how to do it." While Mark Angler was talking, Zach suddenly interrupted and asked, "Who from the Mann family talked to the Angler family?" Mark Angler was stunned when he heard this. "You already know about it?" Zach sneered and didn't say anything. He knew it was the Mann family who had played tricks on him. As expected, that they tricked him in an instant. Furthermore, he was sure that Mark Angler wouldn't dare to lie about such a matter. If the Marquez family really started a war with the Mann family, he, the troublemaker, would bring the entire family to the ocean. Listening to Zach's cold laughter, Mark Angler only thought that Zach knew everything. Furthermore, he simply revealed everything. "It's not that I don't want to do this, because I have no other choice. The one who was sent to see my father was Holden, and the order I received was also given by my father. That's why I can't resist the wishes of the family." It was the Mann family, and it was Holden. What were they trying to do? Zach's back was facing Mark Angler, and he frowned slightly. Holden was looking for the leader of the Angler family. This meant that Holden had received the orders of his father. This was because the rules of the major families were strict. For example, Zach's actual status was higher than the leader of the Angler family, but he still couldn't meet him directly, because the leader of the Angler family was the same generation as his father. In a large family that paid attention to rules, it was very rude for him to meet the Angler family leader directly. It was an insult. Therefore, Holden must have been ordered by the leader of the family to go see him. This also meant that the next lead of the family would probably fall on Miss Holden. Of course, Zach could also ask the old fox for permission. As long as the old fox agreed, he didn't need to see Mark Angler at all. But in fact, he didn't dare to ask for it, because the old fox was definitely waiting for him to speak excitedly right now. Zach didn't dare to take the reins of the family. Doing so would be painting a target on his own back. He wasn't afraid of losing his head, but he was afraid of trouble. As the head of the family, he had to consider all aspects. It would be a lot of effort. So he thought of a more damaging move. I heard that you don't have a chance to become the head of the family. Mark Angler was wondering what Zach was thinking when he suddenly heard such a strange sentence. He did not quite understand what Zach meant, but he still admitted the truth. Indeed, the chance is not big. The chance wasn't big. These were just polite words. Ever since Mark Angler came into the picture and found out who Zach was, he didn't have eyes for the family seat. However, he didn't dare to think about it. Zach dared to think about it. I will arrange some people for you to throw those who don't obey you into the sea. This way, you will become the Angler family's leader. What? Mark Angler was frightened. If it wasn't for the wall beside him, he would have fallen to the ground. This was too outrageous, wasn't it? But thinking about it carefully, Mark Angler felt that it was quite tempting. Originally, he didn't want the family head to be involved in this matter anymore. But now that Zach mentioned it, he felt that it was very tempting. With the help of the Marquez family, it would be a piece of cake for him to take over the Angler family. It would also be very easy for him to kill those people from the Angler family. He even started to plan carefully. When he became the leader, the most important thing was to stick close to Zach and become his loyal dog. He would bite whoever he wanted. Only by doing so could he ensure that he would stay under the big tree of the Marquez family and enjoy the cool breeze. However, after he planned all this, he remembered another important factor, which was the Mann family. The Marquez family was indeed not small. Compared to the Angler family, it was an absolute colossus. However, compared to the Mann family, it was still slightly inferior. In terms of overall strength, the Mann family was still the strongest family. This was publicly acknowledged. Therefore, under the current circumstances, Holden had sought out the Angler family's leader and asked him to handle some matters. The Angler family's leader had settled the matter. If Mark Angler killed the leader, he would go and seek Zach's help. Of course, the Mann family wouldn't start a war with the Marquez family because of such a trivial matter, and they wouldn't go and find trouble with Zach either. However, the Mann family could definitely kill Mark Angler. Therefore, Mark Angler was very distressed and didn't know what to choose. Episode 346, Blindsided. On one side was the temptation of being the head of the family, and on the other side was the threat of death from the Mann family. After weighing his options, Mark Angler finally made the decision that he thought was right. Sorry, Mr. Marquez, I can't do that. Zach smiled. It doesn't matter. I was just saying it. Why would I involve the Angler family? Zach's smile made Mark Angler's heart turn cold. But thinking about it, if he could contact Holden and tell him, do you want to tell Holden about this matter? And then take the opportunity to claim credit from him, saying that you rejected my request and that you want to use the opportunity to seek protection from him, to seek refuge with him, and hope to become the family head once again with the support of Holden? Zach's words made Mark Angler's eyes widen. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, I don't. I didn't. I definitely wouldn't dare. To tell the truth, he had never thought that this move could be played like this. All he wanted to do was to protect his own life. Who would have thought that Zach, this big fool, would actually point out a dark path for him? However, he had a thought. Could it be that Zach had deliberately dug a pit for him? Mark Angler could not figure it out for the time being. There was one thing he was certain of right now, and that was, it was not appropriate to offend Zach directly. As for what would happen in the future, at least he had to be more stable in front of him. Zach didn't say anything more about this topic. He just asked the first question again. Is there really nothing we can do about the withdrawal of funds? Mr. Marquez, is this a battle between you and the Mann family? Zach asked Mark Angler, but Mark Angler responded with a question. However, this was not a question in Zach's ears. He smiled and said, "You are using Holden to beat me." Mark Angler hurriedly bowed his head and said, "Mr. Marquez, would not dare. I definitely would not dare to do this." Zach waved his hand and sent Mark Angler away. Before leaving the door, Mark Angler respectfully said, "Mr. Marquez, during your stay in our country, if you need anything, you can ask someone to find me. I will definitely offer you the best service. You can forget about that. Why don't you withdraw the funds of the Sun Department for me?" In the end, Mark Angler also left with squeaking sounds. But after he went out, his face revealed extreme disdain. "Who do you think you are, Zach? How can you compare with Holden? How can the Marquez family compare with the Mann family?" Mark Angler cursed in his heart and left. However, he did not notice that a woman had secretly followed him. Zach didn't know this woman, but he had arranged it for him through Taylor. He had already guessed that this matter was most likely related to the Mann family, so he purposely called Mark Angler over. Initially, he didn't expect Mark Angler to help him solve this matter. All he needed was to dig a hole. Holden had caused him trouble time and time again. If he didn't return some favors, he could not be considered an honorable man. Standing in front of the windowsill, Zach lit up another cigarette. Smoke curled up in the air. He was wondering if Mark Angler had the courage to look for Holden. After leaving the Jasmine International Hotel, Mark Angler went to his car. Sitting in the car, he let go of his tie. The driver asked him where he was going, but he did not reply. After taking out his phone, Mark Angler used his family connections to find the foothold of Holden. Fortunately, Holden was still in Canada and was accompanying his sister on a vacation. After all, Canada was not very big. That was why Mark Angler saw Holden at noon. At this time, Holden was eating lunch with his sister Madeline. When Mark Angler saw her, he was stunned. The women he had seen were not as pure as Madeline. Madeline was wearing a long white dress. Her hair was black and beautiful, with a moving luster. There was no strange expression on her face. There was only a smile, as if she was smiling, as if she was looking at everything. Even when she looked at Mark Angler, she seemed to be smiling. However, that smile was hard to describe. It made Mark Angler feel as if he had no feelings at all. He had already received a report from his subordinate that Mark Angler was coming over, so Holden wasn't surprised. If he did not agree, Mark Angler did not have the qualifications to come. "Bring Madeline back to her room to rest." After greeting the nanny accompanied Madeline to the guest room. When they passed by him, Mark Angler saw Madeline's good figure and could not help but take a few more glances. "If you still need these eyes, I suggest that you do not look in the future." Holden's words came from not far away, scaring Mark Angler so much that he quickly lowered his head. "Mr. Mann, I don't dare." Holden signaled the servants to pack their things, and then looked at Mark Angler. "You asked someone to tell my secretary that you have something important to talk to me about? I hope it's really as important as you said." Mark Angler knew that this was asking him to talk about proper business, so he didn't dare to say anything more. He quickly told him about Zach looking for him this morning. He didn't exaggerate the truth, nor did he miss out half a sentence. When he found out that Zach had come to Canada, Holden smiled. "Mr. Marquez is quite fast. I just arranged for someone to cause some trouble for the car companies, and he followed me here. Asking you to solve the problem is not a bad idea. As long as your car department is solved, then the other car departments are solved. Then this problem would be solved. With the influence of the Marquez family, it's not difficult for him to do this. But what I don't understand, why did he have to solve this problem? What does this have to do with him? He can't even grasp a chance as good as a year. As a businessman, he's not very pure. This is very different from Quincy's self-flaunting of a pure businessman." After Holden finished speaking with a smile, Mark Angler took this opportunity to speak. What do you think? Do you think I need your opinion? Don't you think too highly of yourself? Mark Angler had just opened his mouth, and he was retorted by Holden. Perhaps it was not considered a retort at all. Holden was merely telling Mark Angler a fact. In front of people like him and Zach, Mark Angler's "I think" was useless. He was just an errand boy. He just needed to act like a mute and do things. There was no need for him to say anything. At this moment, Mark Angler had also realized this point, so he was very unhappy. But there was nothing he could do. However, this pawn still wanted to struggle and struggle to become a big pawn. So he mustered up his courage and knelt down on the ground, kowtowing with all his strength. "Mr. Man, please, save me!" Episode 347, Don't Give. Holden was trying to figure out what Zach was trying to do. While Holden was smoking his cigar and pondering about this matter, Mark Angler was still kneeling on the ground. When the cigar was finished, Holden looked at Mark Angler. "You are worried that Mr. Marquez will deal with you if you reject him. That is why you wanted to express your goodwill to me and take the opportunity to seek refuge with me. But in the end, you even begged me to have you become a dog under my feet. You want me to promote you, a person who has no chance of becoming the leader, to the position of leader? Is that so?" Mark Angler's heart skipped a beat. All of a sudden, he had no idea how Zach and Holden's brains worked. He had never thought of something that could be thought of in such a short period of time. Zach had said it so earlier. Now, Holden had said the same thing. He felt some fear in his heart. He was afraid of these two young men, so he decided to be sincere in front of Holden. Mark Angler pressed his forehead against the ground with all his strength, then closed his eyes tightly. "Yes, Mr. Man, that's what I think. Please, you are my only chance. If I'm that lucky, I'm willing to be an obedient dog by your side." Being a dog was also a kind of luck. This was the goal that Mark Angler had set for himself, or rather the price that he was willing to pay. Although this was very embarrassing, he was willing to do so. Holden sat on the chair and looked up at the white clouds and the blue sky, enjoying the fresh sea breeze. "Why are you doing this? You're a dignified disciple of the Angler family, yet you want to lower your head like this and become a dog by my side? And you even said that this is a kind of luck? If you were by Zach's side, you would probably have become a dog by his side by now." Just as Holden finished speaking, Mark Angler gritted his teeth and replied, "But that is not a kind of luck. If you go against the Man family by following him, you are digging your own grave. I don't want to die. I still want to be leader of the Angler family." Holden smiled. It was a very comfortable smile. "Although I know you are flattering me, and I know that you might not think that way in your heart, these words still make me feel very uncomfortable." After a slight pause, Holden continued, The weather today is not bad. My mood is also, well, quite good. I suddenly want to hear the dog barking. Woof! Woof! There were no dogs there. There was indeed a dog barking. Furthermore, it was after Holden finished speaking. This sound came from Mark Angler's mouth, and it could be heard that he didn't hesitate at all. Holden's smile became more and more comfortable. You're really shameless. But this is good. The more shameless you are, the harder it will be for you to succeed, because that will become a kind of resistance. Only by giving up their humanity can they be equipped with light armor, use the fastest speed to succeed, and use the greatest amount of strength to achieve greater success. I have high hopes for you. Go, Mark Angler. You will become the leader of your family. He knelt and kowtowed. He imitated the barking of a dog. Mark Angler tossed aside everything he could throw away. That was why he succeeded. He had successfully obtained the recognition of Holden, and he had also succeeded in obtaining the position of the Angler family, promised by Holden. Thank you, Mr. Man. Thank you very much. After smashing his forehead into the ground again, Mark Angler raised his head and stood up. He left, with dirt on his forehead. His face was full of excitement. He felt that he had walked the right path this time. Zach, the big idiot, had unintentionally pointed out the right path for him. With the promise of Holden, he would surely become the leader of the Angler family in the future. Looking at Mark Angler, whose footsteps were filled with strength, a mocking smile appeared on Holden's face. If a person is shameless, then what is the point of living? These words were very different from what he and Mark Angler had just said. However, he couldn't tell Mark Angler these words. He would just let that fool laugh foolishly. At the very least, he could still cause some small trouble for Zach through him. At the same time, Zach sat in an authentic cuisine shop with Taylor and Donnie accompanying him, eating. At this time, Taylor's phone rang. He stood up and bowed to apologize, then went to the side to answer the phone. Not long after, Taylor returned to the front. Mr. Marquez, there's news from Mark Angler. Mark Angler went to the beach of Chasing Wave House and stayed there for more than 10 minutes. But my men couldn't follow him in. That place is protected, so no one knows who Mark Angler met there. But I can see that Mark Angler is very happy. Zach smiled. Won't we know who he met with after we make a phone call? Zach signaled Taylor to call him, and then he took the phone. Mark Angler, you just left my place and went to see Holden. Are you really not afraid that I will kill you? A silent voice came from the other end of the phone. It was obvious that Mark Angler was panicking and didn't know what to do. After that, Mark Angler finally spoke. Mr. Marquez, please forgive me. I'm just trying to survive in the crevice. After seeing Holden, it was clear what he was thinking. The tone was enough to show a lot of things. Zach deliberately put his phone to the side and continued to eat. After half a minute, he hung up the phone, but at the same time, he tapped on the phone's screen. Donnie was curious. Boss, what do you mean? Zach said, I wanted him to think that I threw down my phone in anger, but I am keeping a cool head to see what he will do. Donnie was very surprised. You can say so much. It might not work, right? Zach laughed loudly. Who knows? Let's try it. Episode 348, Morning. Donnie felt that Zach was trying to deceive him, but Taylor didn't think so. In order to figure out his superior's intentions and to better understand people's hearts, he had specifically gone to learn psychology. Therefore, he knew very well what Zach was doing. Zach was giving Mark Angler a psychological hint just now. This method was very clear. They would deliberately create a false image to make people misunderstand their intentions. Therefore, it was definitely not as Zach had joked with Donnie. If it was possible, then so be it. If it was not possible, then so be it. Taylor looked at the calm and collected Zach and felt a little shocked in his heart. He didn't know why this man had so many tricks up his sleeve. At the same time, he also didn't understand why Zach still dared to play tricks on him after knowing about the Mann family's heir. Could it be that the young and aggressive Zach wanted to fight with the Mann family's heir? At the same time, Mark Angler, who was holding his phone, had a mocking expression on his face. "Idiot! You still can't do anything to me. Breaking the phone is the most useless act, but in front of Mr. Mann, you can only be useless." At this moment, Mark Angler felt that he had made the right decision. Choosing to join Holden made him feel that his status had risen rapidly in a short period of time. He even mistakenly believed that he was almost on the same level as Zach, because Zach didn't dare to do anything to him. Therefore, in his eyes, this was the advancement of his status. However, after feeling pleased with himself, he still pondered in his heart. Thinking about it, he was worried that Zach would no longer care about Holden's face and kill him. So he quickly found a few bodyguards to accompany him. As the presence of these bodyguards made him realize that there was still a difference in status between him and Zach. But this was only natural. How could a dog be on an equal footing with a human? After lunch, Zach let Taylor bring the information of the Angler family to his room. Sitting on a chair, Zach carefully read the information about the Angler family. Then he called Quincy. The old fox quickly answered the call. When the old fox asked what was going on, Zach replied very quickly, "Shall we change the leader of the Angler family?" Quincy, who was on the other end of the line, was stunned. "Stinking brat! Aren't you going a little too far by doing this?" It wasn't that he couldn't do it. That was indeed a little too much. After all, Zach told him a lot of things over the phone, including what the Mann family was going to do against him again. Quincy pondered for a while and said, "It shouldn't be the idea of that old man. It's most likely the idea of that brat, Holden. All right, since they're all young people, all right, I will let you young people fight with each other. We old things will not get involved. But, stinking brat, you have the ability to cheat everyone. Is there anyone who will get hurt?" "I've thought it out. There shouldn't be much collateral." Since the old fox said he wouldn't get involved, Zach knew what to do. After hanging up the phone, Zach found Minnie under Taylor's lead. Minnie, according to the family seniority, was Mark Angler's cousin. She was also the only child left behind by her father, who had his heart dug out by a thief. She also had two brothers, who were also killed in the same attack that killed her father. Zach carefully understood Minnie. She was 27 years old this year, and she had been by her parents' side since she was very young. Because she was a girl, and was also the youngest, she was especially doted on by her parents. But it was also because of this that Minnie, who was often brought along by her parents, also saw her father's new way of doing things. It could be said that her words and teachings were deeply affected. However, thinking about it, it was also because of her daughter's body that allowed her to have the chance to survive the assassination. When they found Minnie in a flower shop, Minnie was planting flowers. She was a very beautiful woman. She had a round face, fair skin, and the ample muscle on both sides of her face was very round. When she smiled, it was very smooth. She even had small dimples. She was very charming. She was wearing a pink and white dress, which made her look very beautiful and refreshing. However, Zach knew a little about her. She was a mixed-blood daughter, and her mother was a Chinese immigrant. This gave Minnie the grace and elegance that Asian women possessed. Her entire person exuded a lovely charm. After entering the flower shop, Zach looked around at the flowers and also noticed the interior of the shop. There were only two people. One was Minnie, the owner of the flower shop, and the other was the shop assistant, a woman in her 30s. With the staff's company and introduction, Zach chose a flower basket with white chrysanthemums. The white chrysanthemums were mostly used to commemorate the ceremony, and the flower basket was also very solemn. It was not cockish, but very elegant. In the next moment, Zach paid the bill and then carried the flower insertion blue to Minnie's side. He stretched out his hand, and the flower insertion blue of the white chrysanthemums was handed to Minnie. "It's for you." Minnie raised her head and looked at Zack. There was no fluctuation to her watery eyes. She only showed a polite smile on her face. "Sir, this blue flower is more suitable for mourning the dead rather than giving it away." Zack nodded. "You're right, so I will give it to you. I will let you pay tribute to your loss." The smile on Minnie's face disappeared.